Folks, Dragoncon 2024. I'm very tired. It was a lot of fun. Um, so those of you who know, because I've done a lot of different videos on Dragoncon across this channel and the alternate channel, and some videos that are so old that they don't exist anymore. I have been going to Dragoncon since every year since 2007, and was my first con. Is the biggest con I go to, and is one of my favorite cons. I wouldn't say it's my number one favorite, but it might become my number one favorite depending on how Anime Weekend Atlanta handles the transition to the new venue. There was a lot of romanticizing of the old venue for AWA that kept that as my favorite. And sort of the practical nature of it being not quite as a busy convention where you can actually like take your time to talk to people and make new friends. DragonCon has been incredibly hectic and busy, and it's very difficult to get around and talk to everybody that you want to talk to. But it also has like this grand spectacle to it that like no other con does, and you're able to get involved in a lot of different communities that don't exist outside of other cons. See a lot of guests and a lot of unique personalities on panels and stuff like that don't go to other cons, and it's just a really cool experience. And this year was very different than any other Dragon Con I've had before, because I this was the first year that I had Michelle, my wife, with me, and one of our best friends rooming with us. It was just three of us, and it was the first time that the two of them had a full weekend from start to finish, and their entire lives, which was really cool because, you know, I've done this a million times, but they go to other cons and have missed out on how cool Dragon Con can be. So we got there on Wednesday night this year, which I typically don't do. We typically only book our rooms starting on Thursday night, checking out Monday morning. But we got a little Airbnb right there by the Hyatt. It's right at the corner of Hardy Ivy Park, which is where a lot of photo shoots take place. There's like a little historical castle-looking structure thing, little arches and all that kind of thing. So people like to take photos there. And our room was an Airbnb in an apartment building right there in Hardy Ivy Park. So you basically step out of your room and you're right there at one of the photo shoot locations, which is one of our favorite places we like to book our room at. But I've stayed in all of the DragonCon host hotels except for I've stayed in the big three. I've stayed in the big three, and then I've stayed at the Days Inn one year, which sucked, and I stayed at the Ritz Carlton one year, which was fun but very expensive, as I'm sure you can guess. And this is by far my favorite rooming arrangement because you do have to take a crosswalk over to the Hyatt, but it's right there, and it takes so little time to get out of your room. That little walk across the street beats the elevator wait in the host hotels, and it surely made checking in and out a lot easier. But we get there on Wednesday night, and it was surprisingly already really busy. Wednesday night has kind of become the new Thursday for DragonCon over the years. And, it used to be where people really wouldn't start showing up until Thursday, but now, like, Wednesday night, even though it's not an official day of the con, is pretty much an official day of the con. We took a long time getting down there because traffic was awful, and so we had kind of a late dinner. By late to me, I mean like 8:30. Like, we weren't eating at like 11:30 at night like some people do during this con, but we stopped at the Metro Diner, which is sort of like attached to Peachtree Center. And I had never been there before, but it was a cool little restaurant. It had a very cool, city diner vibe to it, and they had quite a variety of food. And they sat us quickly, and they got us our food quickly, and that was nice. And then we walked back over to the host hotels, and I was giving the girls a grand tour of all of the venue, the main host hotels, and where we were how to get around the host hotels, because there are paths that allow you to go indoors and connect from one hotel to the other, but you may be inclined to avoid those depending on how much foot traffic there is. And sometimes you have to go on the street level, but the street level gets really hot because you have to go outside, and all those little nuances. But they got to see firsthand a lot of the one like event thing that was going on Wednesday night, which was the weird memes that DragonCon has. So there's all these little emergent cultures that come out of like DragonCon memes, and so most people are probably familiar with the carpet. So the Marriott Marquis Hotel had a very iconic carpet design for many, many, many years. And several years ago, they had the carpet. There was two guys that decided to do a cosplay of like the little green toy soldier army men guys, but instead of being green, they would be camouflaged with the design of the carpet, and that was really clever. And then they got a cease and desist from the people that own the design for the carpet, and that caused this like cultural uh like rebellious backlash against that, where people started like doubling down and tripling down and doing more and more and more creative carpet costumes. And because I guess there was some, I don't know all of the specifics on it, but there is some way in which they can legally get away with it. Some people have to like modify the design a little bit to where it's not exactly one to one the same as the original carpet. And then the Marriott had that carpet a few years later removed. So, and they replaced it with a more generic, like brown and black and gray striping pattern, which just looks, it's fine, but it's not nearly as iconic. And so, because the carpet was already somewhat notorious at that point, that like compounded on the sort of cultural movement of like the carpet having a fandom, and now there's only just the cult of the carpet, and it's a whole genre of like Dragoncon memes. And so on Wednesday night, the carpet cult gathers together and does all their weird cosplay groups and really creative stuff that they do. They have vehicles wrapped in the carpet pattern. They sell a product wrapped in the carpet pattern. People with carpet apparel, carpet lanyards, carpet food. There was in the doors room we saw some cookies and cakes and stuff that had the carpet pattern on them and stuff like that. And apparently there is one spot under a staircase on one of the floors of the Marriott where they didn't get all of it up. So there is like one little corner where if you kind of like peel back the new carpet, you can see just a little bit of the old carpet that's left. And people actually went like dumpster diving the year that they took the carpet out and were like taking samples of the old carpet, the original, and preserving it as like a historical like collectible item. I actually have a piece of it. A friend of mine had it for a while, didn't know what to do with it. It was in the back of his car for like a year, and he ended up just giving it to me. So I do have a piece of the carpet. It's disgusting, but I but I have it for whatever that's worth. And the other weird meme of DragonCon that you may or may not be familiar with is there was a few years back a FedEx piece of advertising in one of the connecting Skybridge hallways between the Hyatt, the Marriott, and Peachtree Center, where the food court is. And the Marriott has a FedEx office building distribution thingy in the basement level. And so it was a cardboard cutout of like a FedEx employee wearing a uniform, giving a little polite smile. And the con-goers decided to just vandalize the hell out of this one year. They put googly eyes on him. They put like beads on him and like the little flower necklaces and everything. And they put like drinks in his hand. Gave him like devil horns, the whole 9 yards. Like they just went absolutely crazy on this guy. And the vandalism of John the FedEx cardboard cutout got even more crazy as the weekend went on. And then I think they eventually took him away because he was getting vandalized, and so that again created another like malicious compliance like protest of like, oh my god, they took John away, now what do we do? So there now is the cult of John, where I guess they're not allowed to call it FedEx anything because they don't want to use the FedEx mark or brand or anything like that. But it is literally just called the Cult of John, and it is they do all kinds of weird, like it's an ironic thing. They're like pretending to be a cult, but it's like worshiping this cardboard cutout of this guy John that worked for FedEx. It's very funny, and the spot where he used to stand apparently in the there's like a little FedEx like locked box, like it's like a mailbox that sits in that hallway. And already on Wednesday night, people were just leaving a bunch of crap on the floor as like a weird tribute to him. And I'm used to this by now, of course. But the one thing that took me by surprise already on Wednesday night, among the random swag and stuff they had left there, and I'll show the picture, is an entire Beyblade arena that somebody had just left on the floor for the Cult of John. I just couldn't. It was the weirdest thing. I'm like, are you going to come back for this, or is the Beyblade arena just going to get thrown away? Like, what's happening here? And it was like a day or two in when the shrine to John did eventually get cleaned up and everything got thrown away, and then they started over again. So like the pile of tribute to John was built up, destroyed, and rebuilt twice over during the con, which was very funny to see as you're passing through. But that's pretty much it for Wednesday. One of the big negative things I will say about this Dragoncon that is not the fault of the convention in any way, shape, or form is that it was way, way too hot. This was probably the hottest Dragoncon I think I've ever had, and because it was like mid 90s the majority of the weekend, and like Wednesday and Thursday were like consistently like mid 90s, and it did get a little bit cooler on Friday, thankfully, but oh my god, like it was so hot, and I was just wearing regular clothes a good portion of the time. I did have 3 cosplays with me, and I will talk about that. But but on Wednesday, just getting from our room to where we had dinner to the different hotels and back, I'm like just sweating all through my clothes, wearing just regular clothes and like wearing like regular soft shorts, like basketball shorts kind of things, and like getting my like thighs are rubbing together and chafing and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my god, this is just unbearable. And so I'm sure it was really, really, really bad for people who are wearing super hot cosplays for long periods of time to do the parade. But we'll talk about that. So because we got our room super, super early on Wednesday night, we were able to get in line for our badge pickup really, really early. And badge pickup was so easy this year. It was so trivial. It was quick. We were able to get up whenever we wanted to and go get like breakfast in the Hilton. They have like a little market there with a coffee stand, and like sip our coffee and go get in line. And allegedly, according to the Dragoncon app and like the official schedule, the registration was supposed to open at 10 for you to be able to pick up your badges, when they were going to start giving badges. And so we went over there. It was like 8:45, 8:50, something like that, because we were like, let's get in line at 9 and just wait for an hour. Waiting an hour is not that big of a deal in Dragoncon terms. So people were already walking away from the hotel formerly known as the Sheraton with their badges. And so that meant for us that when we came up to normally the badge pickup line is so long that it wraps all the way around the building. And when you get inside the building, it zigzags inside the ballroom until you get to the desks. So we skipped all of that and were able to go basically straight into the front door of the hotel, straight into the ballroom where it zigzags, and the people in front of us were moving through the zigzag, so it was basically just walking straight in and straight up to a table to get our badges. It was completely effortless. Most effortless badge pickup we've ever had. The rest of Thursday was basically just me continuing to show the girls around the venue and do some people watching. We've managed to get over to the Westin, which is the other hotel that's slightly further down. And I've always been intimidated to go to the Westin for things in previous Dragoncons ever since they implemented the Westin, because the first couple of Dragoncons I went to, there was no Westin. It was just the 3 main hotels, the Hyatt, Marriott, and the Hilton. And the registration used to be in the basement of the Hyatt. And that was awful. And so, a few years later, they implemented the Sheraton where registration was, and then a few years later, they implemented the Westin for additional panels and programming. And so the Westin had the video game track, which we made very judicious use of throughout this weekend, which I'll talk about, but showed them where that was. And it honestly is not that much of it's really not that much of a walk at all. It's not that far from the rest of the hotels. It's basically right across the street. It's like one light up from Peachtree Center. So if you're doing the Skybridge thing from the Hyatt and the Marriott into Peachtree Center, into the food court, and leave the food court to go up to the street, it's one more light, and that's it. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the street. I took them to dinner with some of our friends from the Fire Emblem group to a place called Max Loggers, which is a fantastic restaurant right around the corner from our room. It's basically one light north on Peachtree Street from the Hyatt, the other direction, and it's basically right on the corner of where our room was. And it is a fantastic, fantastic restaurant. The first time we went there was several years ago on Thursday of the con, before Wednesday became the new Thursday, and one of the owners was like showing us the brewery upstairs and everything, and their food is so good. I got like this crazy barbecue chicken pizza thing that looks insane, and then we were able to get done with dinner and come back, and I think our friend used that time to change out of her cosplay, and we started doing some panels in the evening. So there was somebody who was hosting a panel on Fire Emblem Three Houses, and was hosting a war crimes tribunal for all of the characters. Basically, for those of you who are familiar with Fire Emblem Three Houses, of course you're familiar with it because there's all this online discourse around the game constantly, because sometimes people forget that this franchise is about war, and people do bad things in war, and where war is inherently about people dying. So there's all this, like, there's been a constant like ethical debate about the actions of these characters for 5 years now, and it shows no signs of stopping. And so, sort of as like a rhetorical thing, because that discourse keeps happening, this panelist was like, well, I'm just going to do a war crimes tribunal, and we're going to look at actual like codes and laws and like the Geneva Convention and all that, and talk about these characters in that term. And so that they also did this, I think, at MomoCon. We did not get to see it, but we met up with some of the other people who were there. There was maybe like 3 or 4 people that I knew by name who are in our big Fire Emblem cosplay group who also came to Dragoncon. There's not that much overlap between the anime convention people and the Dragoncon people, but occasionally you do get a few people that do overlap. So we went to the War Crimes Tribunal with some of those people, and had a really good time. So unfortunately, the panelist for this panel had COVID, so she couldn't make it. And so the panel, unbeknownst to us, turned into, let's just show a recording of the panel that was done at a previous con, like MomoCon or who knows which con. And so that was, and it was initially like, that's super unfortunate that this person couldn't be here, and their solution for it is like, it's the best they could do, but it's admittedly a little messy, a little bit it's not exactly ideal, because this recording of the panel was not done with professional audio or camera work, so you're really trying to listen to what she's saying, and like there's the camera's shaky and everything. But that aside, very, very professionally well put together panel, and huge credit to this person for hosting it and doing such a good job. Very well rehearsed, very well read. Her like facilitation skills of being able to talk through all these different topics was absolutely top notch. No ums or uhs or stuttering or anything like that. Just keeping right on track and having a very professional, very engaging cadence to her. Just absolutely phenomenal job. And to no one's surprise, the Black Eagles were the ones that committed the most war crimes. Although apparently the twist of this panel, not to spoil it, is that basically all of the combined war crimes of all 3 factions can be laid at the feet of Byleth themselves, because they were the one in control. So, but anyway, so after that, we were able to leave directly from that to go back to the Westin to go to a video game panel there. And this was a panel about objectifying video game men. And if you don't know what this panel is about, you have not been around enough horny women. And let me tell you, it as a completely straight man, this panel was a lot of fun. I had a great time. It was so good. I love watching my female friends especially be just absolutely degenerate. And like the person hosting this panel like cold opened the panel with the like Squidward meme, where he's like, "We serve food here, sir," but instead he's like, "We objectify men here, sir," and it was great. And so it was basically just like, here's a bunch of different categories of characters. You know, here's some archetypes and different traits they have, and here's iconic characters that fit into that. And it was very good taste in characters. It wasn't oops all gotcha game characters. I think I saw only like one Genshin character in there, which was super cool to see. It was mostly like varied good taste characters. You know, lots of Final Fantasy characters, lots of Resident Evil characters, lots of um, Metal Gear characters, characters from Western RPGs, your Baldur's Gate, your Dragon Age, stuff like that, and some Fire Emblem characters. So like in terms of different genres and different franchises, like very varied, very good taste. We learned that Baby Girl is the category of a male character that is um, built in a lab to be objectified, and so I don't know how else to describe that in the way the panelists did, but it's like Leon from Resident Evil 4 and Cloud from FF7 are Baby Girl, and then I had a category that was like Old Queen, which is like Asterion from Baldur's Gate 3, where it's like this like absolute asshole who's like but really pretty and like flamboyantly bisexual and like all this stuff, and it's really fun, really fun panel. And I loved seeing my wife and our best friend getting absolutely just called out so hard. And this panel had a really funny punchline to it, which is sometimes they would introduce a category, and then they would have like, you know, normal character, punchline character. And so they would be talking about like, like some broody bad boy character, and they would have like a couple of normal options, and the last one would be like, oh yeah, Shadow the Hedgehog, and like everybody would start laughing, and they'd be like, all right, you know what, it's true, it's actually true. And the the one that we got out of context, it was great, was like they were talking about like DILF characters, and she was like, yeah, the best DILF character is it's Tom Nook from Animal Crossing. It's just Tom Nook from Animal Crossing. It's actually just Tom Nook from Animal Crossing, and everybody laughed at that. It was great. So after that, we had a great time, laughed up quite a bit of that, and we're ready to call it a night. Late night shenanigans at Dragoncon are a lot of fun. 10 p.m. panels are a lot of fun. You get a lot of degeneracy there. There's also like the con never stops. It never stops. It is continuous from, the first thing on Thursday morning after registration opens, and it does not stop until Monday afternoon at like 5 p.m. or whatever. So it's continuous. You can always go through the venue. Lots of places are open late. Peachtree Center, the food court, has some stuff that's open late. You can always count on that Dairy Queen to be open until like at least midnight. So when you are like about to, you made some awful choices that day. You haven't had dinner, but you really just want a Blizzard. You're gonna mess up your gut and get overheated and throw up in your cosplay. You want that DQ Blizzard, and we absolutely went back and had that DQ Blizzard. We were done with our video game men panel, and we went and got a DQ Blizzard, and it was great. It was only made me feel a little bit like garbage, but that's what you got to do. And so Friday morning, we knew we were going to try to hit up the dealer's room because it first opens on Friday. It wasn't available on Thursday. And so we had breakfast at the Corner Bakery restaurant with my dad, who also does Dragoncon every year. He has one of the parade vehicles. No doubt you've seen the white like 80s body style Camaro that tows the TIE Fighter on the trailer. That's his vehicle. So we had breakfast at Corner Bakery, really awesome restaurant right there in front of the Hyatt that is surprisingly, you would really be shocked by this, very easy to get a table, very easy to get your food during like peak Dragoncon. Again, this is Friday morning, and you can walk right in there, get an order, and get breakfast like it's a normal weekday or a normal like weekend in a regular restaurant. It's great. You don't have to fight in there. You don't have like a multi-hour wait to get a table. It's pretty much effortless. Got in line for the dealer's room, And the dealer's room, again, the line wraps. The dealer's room with Dragoncon is like not in any of the host hotels. It is in the America's Mart building, which is a couple blocks down the street. And the America's Mart has like two separate, maybe even more than that, two separate buildings. One of the building is just the dealer's room, and the other building is the gaming and tabletop areas. And the dealer's room has like 5 floors. It's got like vendors, and it has the top floor is like comic book artists and independently published authors, which is really cool. And so the line zigzags around, it goes around the building and zigzags through the parking deck. And so we were like around 3 corners of the building and in the parking deck, but we didn't go all the way around. So we were actually in a pretty good spot in line. We got in pretty quick. The line management and control there was very top notch. Dragoncon volunteers and staff are always on top of everything. You can usually count on all that stuff to be pretty well done. So we get inside the dealer's room and we go up the escalator up to the very top where the independent artists are, the comic book artists and independently published authors, because I knew the girls would want to take a lot of time to look at that stuff because it's stuff that you don't see at other cons and it uniquely appeals to them. So we started there and gradually worked our way down through the dealer's room and talked to a lot of really cool people, talked to a lot of really cool artists, got a lot of info for a lot of cool online stores for really unique stuff that you don't see at other cons. Can't remember. I probably should have done a better job taking notes of some of the really interesting things we saw in there and some of the artists we found people were going to go look up online later. One of the only things I bought was a car decal of Rex from Mass Effect, who is going to replace my Marathon logo on my car once I get around to scraping off what's left of that. And eventually we hit a point in time where I think we got all the way down to the 2nd floor, and we almost finished that before I said, okay, we've got to stop, we've got to leave and get lunch so I can go get changed into my cosplay for the Final Fantasy photo shoot. So the Square Enix meetup was at 3, and I was going to cosplay Auron from Final Fantasy X again. And I go to put everything on, and I realize I have forgotten my shirt for it. And the way that I've designed his belt that goes around his coat is there's a snap that connects the belt in place, so it doesn't. The belt is anchored to the shirt, so the belt can't slide down off the coat. And I had forgotten that shirt somehow, and I guess I just didn't do a very good job of double checking my packing. So I said, okay, well I just can't wear it then, and that's unfortunate, but it does happen, and it's kind of a blessing in disguise because the sword I have for him is his ultimate weapon, the Masamune, and it's huge and it's pointy, and people would just bump into this thing left and right during the con and probably break it again. So it probably wasn't even worth it anyway. So we kind of spectated the Square Enix meetup, took some pictures, went around the corner. There was a Warhammer group meeting up, and there were some absolutely massive like Space Marine guys there, which were really cool. So we took a look at them for a minute. Kind of had some time to kill before any of our other panels or other activities on Friday, so I took the girls into the Walk of Fame to show them some of the celebrities that were in there. We didn't really have anyone in particular that we like desperately wanted to see, and we don't really collect autographs or anything, so we didn't really get in line and talk to anybody. But there were some cool people there this year. So we turned the corner into the Hall of Fame, and there's Nathan Fillion just right there, and I'm like, he's like one of the A-list guests at this con. He's very, very hard to see. He has like $100+ autograph, and dude is right there. It was very funny. And Alan Tudyk was his booth was right next to him, but he wasn't at his booth. People are very fanatical about a show that had one season and didn't do anything else after that. In the case of Firefly, and Firefly is a good show, but like, people are very fanatical, and so when Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk and all them come to the Dragoncon, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal. There were some other really cool people in there too, some cool voice actors. There was Cam Clark was in there, who's the voice of, among other people, is the voice of Liquid in Metal Gear Solid. He's the voice of Kratos in Tales of Symphonia. They had the guy, I'm trying to remember his name, who plays like Gus in Breaking Bad, and his like the guy from all those memes and everything you keep seeing, like he was there. Mike Coulter, who plays Luke Cage and plays Spartan Locke in Halo 5, was there. Lots of really cool people were there. And we just kind of were able to kind of spectate from the sidelines and see them. You had Rob Paulson, who's Pinky in the Brain, was there. Really cool voice actor. So after that, we worked our way back over to the Weston for another video game panel, and this one is about. It's called "Is It a Dinosaur?" And this was a panel about, as you might imagine, video game creatures and whether or not they classify as dinosaurs from a paleontological, from a anatomical standpoint. Do they make sense as dinosaurs, kind of thing? And this is a good time to point out that one of the really cool things about Dragoncon panels is the presenters are always like industry professionals. They are extremely qualified to talk about whatever they're talking about. You're not just getting some random person like me talking about something. You have like professors of science, and you have like, qualified professionals in industries talking about this stuff. So the guys on this podcast were actual like paleontologists, and what they were describing was like the presenter would be like, here's a video game creature, is this based off of a real life dinosaur, and if so, which one? And they were starting off with ones that made sense, like here's this cute little guy from like Paleo Pines. Obviously he's a dinosaur. The creators intended it to be a dinosaur, but I thought they were going to go for more abstract stuff, like, hey, here's this monster hunter creature, or here's this big dragon boss from some Final Fantasy game, is that a dinosaur, kind of thing. But they got weird really quick. She went into very obscure territory really quick. Like in Animal Crossing, you can find like little piles of bones on the beach or whatever, and there's like a little like non-representative like little skull on the ground, and they're like, is that a dinosaur? And they were like, no, it doesn't have enough holes in the side of the skull, so it's a turtle, and like stuff like that. And then the one that absolutely just ended me, I laughed so hard, was Ripto, the villain from Spyro 2, is supposed to be a dinosaur according to the game. But I don't think they really thought about that too much with his design. Allegedly he's a dinosaur, but he has like one horn that's crooked, and he's bipedal and everything, and he's just a weird little guy. That was very funny. I got a big laugh out of that. And then to find out that our friend that was with us, the people on this panel, these paleontologists, are hosts of a podcast that she actively listens to regularly, that she did not know were going to be there. And so, surprise jump scare, she's meeting people that she like is big fans of. And just the giddiness on her face was so worth it. I was so excited just to be like, oh my god, this was so much fun. Got to introduce you to people that you really like, and follow their content and everything, like by sheer accident. We had no idea it was even going to happen. So after that, we had dinner at Mellow Mushroom, which is a few blocks down the road in Atlanta from the convention itself. It was the most remote from the convention we did dinner. Huge shout outs to our friends that joined us for this. We had a few other people who I originally met as part of the Fate group, the Type Moon group, and there's wonderful people, and they paid for our dinner, and they absolutely did not have to do that. Absolute treasures of human beings, and I'm very grateful to be their friends. And Mellow Mushroom is awesome, by the way. We got a pizza called the Maui Wowie, and if you are the type of person who thinks that pineapple does not belong on pizza, then I'm sorry to say it belonged on this one. You're just wrong. It was great. I loved it. Pineapple was good. It just made sense, and I would get it again in a heartbeat. But then after that, we had a little bit of time to kill. Went back into the convention itself with just more people watching of some of the cool cosplays and everything. Because now this is Friday night, people are starting to bring out the really cool stuff. But we had a panel that evening at 10 p.m. that was called "Science." Sometimes science is gross, and the reason I wanted to do some science panels at this con because it's something I'm interested in, it's something our friend is interested in, and is one of the like I would consider that almost one of the nerd things, one of the like nerd interests that we have in common, almost in the same way of being interested in like the same video game, being interested in science for her and I. So, and the other reason I wanted to see it was because one of the people on this panel is a guy named Trevor Valley, who is a former paleontologist, and you may know him for he does like a lot of tabletop streaming and gaming stuff and that kind of thing, is big into tabletop stuff, and or you may know him from his paleontology career. You may know him from appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast, debunking a like nonsensical conspiracy theory video saying that dinosaurs never existed. And that clip of him debunking that video lives rent free in my head. And so I was really excited to finally meet this guy because I knew he goes to Dragoncon. And this panel called "Sometimes Science is Gross." He had a lot of really cool people on there. So they had him, and his current profession is dealing with like drones and remote controlled aircraft, remote controlled vehicles. And the gross part about that field is all of the absolutely gnarly injuries that people get by trying to catch drones with their hands, and the blades just chop their arms to bits. Not something I would have ever thought about, but when you're dealing with a thing this big that has like 8 knives spinning at 32,000 RPM or whatever on takeoff, yeah, some of those injuries are permanent. Happens. And he went into graphic detail, showed some pictures about that. One of the other persons on there was someone who studies decaying life and is does a lot of studies on maggots and stuff like that. So there was a lot of just absolutely gross stuff with like maggots and decomposition of corpses and stuff like that, and like talking about the smell, which I cannot even imagine. These are people that very clearly love their jobs, but there are not a lot of other people lining up to do these jobs. Like, these are hard, difficult, dirty jobs. There was another guy who was talking about cleaning up dead marine life on beaches and the weird things that can happen there. Like, oh, we have a dolphin or a whale that's been beached, and like all the gross things that can happen, like hey, dead things tend to like swell up and become bloated because the gases that are trapped inside them, and they eventually pop, and it's super gross. So here's a whale that's like blown up like a beach ball and is going to explode, and it's going to be disgusting. And then the other person on the panel was a woman who is I believe she said she was a zoologist in a different state, and she was talking about a lot of animal welfare, taking care of different animals and stuff like that, and was talking about basically dissecting a lion after it had died to figure out what killed it. And it turns out that this lion had contracted COVID when 2020, when there was a big outbreak, and almost every lion in that, because apparently felines can get COVID, and so it caused so much damage to there was like the what meningitis like on the brain, where 2 major chunks of the brain completely died. And so this lion was living the last few weeks or months of its life with 2 giant chunks missing from its brain, which is where we came up with the absolutely legendary quote from this con, which is, "It does not take a lot of brain to run a lion." And she showed graphic detail pictures from the biopsy and the holes in the brain and everything, and it was super gross, but very super interesting panel. Had a good time with it. Did not get as grossed out as I thought it was, because I thought that by this panel that I'm talking about as being a super gross panel, that it was going to be about weird animal mating habits and like just gross anatomy stuff of like, hey, this animal has like barbed genitals that explode and stuff like that. Like, I thought that's where where the panel was going, and thankfully was not where the panel was going. It was mostly about dead and decaying stuff and how gross that is, which was gross, but not as bad as we thought it was going to be. It was a 10 p.m. panel. It was more of an adults only panel, but it was good. It was a lot of fun. So then we get to Saturday morning, and of course we line up for the parade. The parade is a big spectacle for Dragoncon. We managed to get up early enough to get some breakfast and stake out a good parade location. It was in the shade. We stood right in front of the Truist building, facing west, so that the building would create shade and we could see the parade. Pretty decent parade this year. A lot of the parades kind of blend together after a while. It's a lot of the same stuff. Usually, whatever big franchises are big will have greater representation over other series, depending on what's currently popular at the time. But I think the only downside with this parade is it was super, super hot. So I'm sure there were some people that couldn't do it. There was a poor girl that like threw up in the middle of the parade, and we were really worried about her, making sure she was going to be okay. And there was, but other than that, the parade was fine. As the parade goes on, a lot of times groups get separated from each other, and the gaps between groups starts to grow a little bit, and it can make watching the parade towards the end of the parade route a little bit more tedious. And I always enjoy the parade, even doing Dragoncon like 17, 18 years now. I still enjoy the parade a lot. It's still a fun spectacle, but I think my only real criticisms of it, my feedback about the parade is that if it were up to me, I think I would categorize things a little bit more specifically. I think I would change the order that things go in a little bit. So, for instance, I have marched in the parade before. I've done it with the 405th, the Halo group. And the last 2 years, they have put the Halo group, the 405th, immediately, like one of the first groups in the parade, right behind the color guard. Because I guess the thought process is that they like thematically match the color guard in terms of aesthetics, because they do have some like Navy uniforms that some of the cosplayers wear and that kind of thing. But they don't march with any kind of rhythmic pattern or anything. They just kind of walk and like wave to the crowd and everything. And so I mean, really, if it were up to me, I would put the Halo group with some of the other sci-fi groups, or with more of the video game groups. So I would have like, the Halo group and the Assassin's Creed group and the BioShock group and the Mass Effect group and so on, like close together. And then there's other opportunities as well where I feel like they have a bunch of like horror themed groups that are randomly split up. Like there's a whole Resident Evil group, there's a whole general horror group, there's the Netherworld's haunted house, which has a massive parade group, always does. It's very impressive. They put a lot of budget and a lot of really cool effects into that. And then of course I would put like all the horror stuff together and maybe have like the Ghostbusters group like right behind them, kind of as like a little play off of that. But that's just me personally. Otherwise, none of that is load bearing for the parade to be enjoyable. And I'm sure the people organizing the parade know a lot more about what makes a good parade than I do. So I trust them to know what they're doing there. But I just have some nitpicks in terms of like the categorization of groups. And I also think that people that sign up for the parade don't necessarily know what group they should go into, or they don't know that there is like a cosplay club that they can go be a part of in order to be included in a particular group. Because in terms of like the Halo group, the 405th and everything, if you're a 405th forum member, you can sign up for the parade on the forum and somebody from the group will get you a parade ribbon for you. But if you just show up at Dragoncon in a Halo cosplay and have never spoken to anybody before and you want to march in the parade, it's going to be a little bit harder to get you in with that group, because we could have made this easier for you, like if you communicated on the front side, but nobody knows who you are. Like that's the kind of thing where it's like, that's nobody's fault, but it's like you could potentially have every character from every franchise together in the same group if they knew where to go, knew who to communicate to. And it's just, sometimes things like that happen. So then it was, going into the room, putting our cosplays on, and the normally what happens when I do march with the Halo group with the 405th is we do the parade, we go into the Marriott, and there's a little side area where we can stage after the parade to take a break, take our stuff off, do repairs, drink some water, and then we immediately transition outside and up to the top of Peachtree Center for our photo shoot. And so even though I wasn't with them this year, I wanted to see everybody, so we went to their photo shoot. And a lot of the outside walking from place to place during Dragoncon this year on the street, in the public, walking across the sidewalk down the city, or walking to Peachtree Center, walking to the Westin, walking to the America's Mart building. There is a lot of that stuff, but it doesn't feel as awkward as it does during other conventions or other nerd events like this. Because in other conventions and other nerd events, you have like the eyes on you, where you're just like, I don't want to be perceived by normies. I feel super embarrassed being in this costume, kind of thing. Just get me out of here, kind of thing. But in Dragoncon takes over pretty much that whole area of downtown, and so you really do feel like you blend in, even though you're on the side of the street. But one of the things I noticed about this year that I didn't really appreciate is the sheer degree to which there are like hustlers and people running some kind of gig, or I would almost borderline say scam, on the street. There have been people before, but I noticed it like so much more so this year. Like on every corner is somebody trying to like hand out a pamphlet for something or get you to donate to something. And sometimes it's just homeless people. And it's really sad to say, without getting like overtly political or anything, there a couple of very bad things happened in the last 4 or 5 years in our country and to our economy, and there's probably a lot more people that are homeless than there used to be. Those people need help. They shouldn't be on the street. And there's some of them that are just living right there in Hardy Ivy Park. And so when you go to Dragoncon, that is just an uncomfortable truth of Atlanta. They be there. And they will ask you for help because they need help. But aside from their situations, which I have a lot of empathy for, there are people out there who are not homeless, who are just like running a hustle. And you know it when you see it, but they're usually handing out a pamphlet for something, or they are asking for donations for something. And even the ones that are not asking for donations are literally just handing out propaganda. It's really interesting. So there was one person that was going up and down. I got a thing from them on Friday, but they were also going up and down the parade being like, hey, do you want a free comic book? And I'm like, that's cool. They must have put a lot of effort into that. I'll take your free comic book, even if it's just an advertisement. I'm kind of curious to see how much effort went into the artwork on this. And so I didn't get a chance to look at it until Saturday afternoon. But I could tell, I was like, this has got to be propaganda for something. But what is their, like, position? What is the issue? Where do they stand on whatever issue they're talking about? And so I noticed on the top of it, it was talked about, like, reform, medical reform of pharmaceutical industries or whatever. And I scroll through the comic, and I get to I see what their narrative is. I see something about like, oh look, they're manufacturing COVID in China, and I'm like, yep, there it is, there it is. It's like COVID conspiracy, anti-vax bullshit, and they're just handing this out to like children on the street. Stop. Go somewhere else. And there was another one that was like, hey, do you want a brochure for a local museum? And it's like, that could mean anything. What does any of that mean? What are those words in that order? What does local museum mean? And it's like, it could be, genuinely museum, but you look at it and it's literally like a Illuminati deep state conspiracy theory propaganda pamphlet. And I'm like, what is going on? This is so weird. And then, like, aside from There's some ones that are less egregious because there's some that are like advocating for trans rights, advocating for women's rights, advocating for ranked choice voting. And when I saw those people, like I'm always, we try to not make eye contact, but if any of them talk to me, I'd be like, don't have time right now, but thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate that you're out here doing this kind of thing. Um, so those people are cool, but it's just unfortunate that, and I get like why they do it because they have a captive audience right there on the street for Dragoncon, but like saying it. Um, and then there's people that are showing up with like musical instruments, just like playing music on the side of the street with a captive audience, hoping to get tips. And sometimes you'll have like a guy with like a trumpet or a saxophone or an accordion or something like that, like playing music on the side of the road, and he'll be like playing like theme songs and nerdy stuff like Star Wars and ET and Ghostbusters and Jurassic Park and etc. And you're like, okay, cool. He's playing the music. People are giving him tips or whatever. But then you listen, like some of these people sound okay, and you listen to some of them, and you're like, this person has no clue what they're doing. This doesn't music does not sound good. It sounds bad. Like they don't actually know what they're doing with this instrument at all, and they're just hoping that you'll hear just enough of it to be able to be like, I know what that song is. I'll give them a tip. They're just running a hustle, dude. Like they get out of here. It's annoying. So, but thankfully the security inside the convention itself, any access point to Peachtree Center, or it has like privately contracted security companies there, and then all of the hotels have people checking badges at every entry and exit point. So you don't get random people running a hustle inside the convention, thankfully, which is greatly appreciated. So I stopped at the Halo photo shoot just briefly. I didn't think anybody was going to recognize me without my armor, especially because I was wearing my Valkyria Chronicles cosplay. So I just kind of like lurked for a minute and we moved on. It was really cool to see those people, but I didn't feel like socializing with them necessarily because I haven't done, so this is on me, I haven't done enough to engage with them in recent years, and I just didn't think they'd recognize me without my armor, so I guess I owe it to them to, another year march in the parade again, like be more engaged with them, and then I'll be able to socialize a little bit more. But after that, we headed back over to the Hilton, and there was a Nintendo photo shoot and another Square Enix photo shoot happening, unfortunately at the same time. Still didn't have my Auron cosplay, didn't have any of my Fire Emblem cosplays, so I was just wearing the Valkyria Chronicles armor and meeting up with a couple of Fire Emblem cosplayers that were in the Nintendo photo shoot. And it was, again, like 4 or 5 people there we knew, and we hung out with them for a minute. It was really cool to see them. Huge shout outs to the Fire Emblem Southeast cosplay group and everybody in there. And it's funny because a lot of the only people that really recognized what I was from with the Valkyria Chronicles cosplay were people in that photo shoot, the Fire Emblem people. I'm like, you people know your strategy games. This is my people. They know what they're talking about. Had lunch in Peachtree Center again, and there was a really cool place in there. Peachtree Center has been remodeled several times. There's been a lot of restaurants that have come and gone. But there's a new place that I don't ever remember seeing in there anymore, which is like a build-your-own salad place, where they give you like a massive bowl, and you pick your ingredients one by one, and you can basically make your own salad. Very cool place. They were like, they give you a free drink. They're like inviting people in there. They didn't have a long wait, but I guess people wanted more junk food. But like the salad was good, man, and it was like, it was good. It was filling. It had a lot of varied ingredients in there. Basically got like 1.5 meals out of the salad place. It was crazy, and so we had a lot of time to kill in the afternoon. We eventually went back to change out of our cosplays, and we didn't really have dinner because of how we timed everything with lunch. So we ended up going back into Peachtree Center. There was a place that had a pretty short line pretty consistently. It was a Vietnamese place, and they had I got a banh mi there on Thursday for lunch, but we were like, let's get a little snack. So we got they had crepes that they would serve you there. So they do like a crepe with like ice cream and Nutella and stuff like that. We got those on Saturday afternoon, and then we didn't really have a whole lot going on. We just did a lot of people watching, a lot of socializing with people we knew at the con, a lot of looking at the big crazy cosplays, and a lot of the spectacle stuff there in the Marriott. Man, if I could change one thing about Dragoncon, and this is going to sound petty, I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me on this. There's a lot of people that just show up to party, and that's fine. but I would do anything if I could just go back in time to the era of Dragoncon where they didn't have this loud music just blasting in the Marriott. There was one moment where we went into the Marriott and I felt like they were blasting it out of the speakers on every floor, so you couldn't get away from it. And so it's like you literally couldn't hear yourself talk in the Marriott. It was so loud. I'm used to just like the ambient roar of the crowd and the like 3 songs looping out of the Cruise Shadows booth in the downstairs lower lobby. And so I just wish that music wasn't blasting out of the Pulse Lounge. It bothered me last year, but it bothered me way worse this year. And then there's a spot on the back steps of the Hilton as well where there's like a DJ out there, and I'm like, I would just give anything to get rid of this stupid music, guys. Like, nobody cares. Like, you have your raves, you have your parties at this con. Like, just go to the stupid 3 a.m. rave. Like, I don't care about your dumb music. I'm really sorry. It's just not what I know that's me being a hater, and that's just not what I'm interested in. But that's something that really got on my nerves with this particular Dragoncon, because the area on the back steps of the Hilton could have been used for like more photo shoots, because it used to be used for more photo shoots. The only other thing we had on Saturday night was a panel in the puppetry track, and so I wanted to make sure the girls got to go to a panel in the puppetry track because it's a really cool programming track. The late night puppet slam was too late for us to really feel good about going to, because it usually starts at like midnight on Sunday night going into Monday morning, and that was just way too late. So we didn't get to do the big puppet slam, but I wanted to make sure they at least got to go to a puppet panel. And so the one we ended up going to was Puppets on Broadway, which talks about Broadway plays and how puppets are used in those plays. This is a great panel. It had 2, again, industry people who do puppeteering for Broadway shows, so like industry professionals, and 2 very interesting guys to listen to. My only complaint with that panel is, again, that like the panel was more about these 2 individuals' careers, whereas I would have liked to have heard more about the specifics of how puppets are operated and used in the production of a Broadway show. And there was a little bit of that, but it was like maybe 15% of the entire total panel was that, and the rest was like all just like random facts about the 2 careers of these people working with puppets on Broadway. So I would have liked to have been a little more educational about, like, you know, how do you build puppets? How do you implement puppets into a stage play? Stuff like that. How do you operate them? How do you maintain them? Blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't as much about that. But good panel overall. Really cool to see those people, but not wholly satisfying, I guess. Then I randomly got a message from one of my longtime friends, somebody I met at my very, very first Dragoncon in 2007, saying that she was at the con. So we met up with her and her husband before crashing for the night on Saturday. I could literally have talked to them all night long. We probably would have been up until like 3 a.m. sitting there talking, but had to call tonight at some point because we were getting tired, and we did have something relatively early in the morning to do on Sunday. So Dragoncon has a group that's just kind of known as like the all anime photo shoot. So historically, they'll have photo shoots for anime that are like really, really big, like your Dragon Ball, your One Piece, your Demon Slayer, I guess your Delicious Dungeon now. Any of the series that are the most popular will get their own photo shoot. But the stuff that's not popular enough to have its own group will just do the all anime photo shoot. I went to that last year, and I was thinking about me and Michelle going to do it this year in our Sengoku Basara cosplays. And it was originally supposed to be 5 p.m. on Sunday. It got changed to Sunday at 10 a.m., which was a huge time change, and I wasn't really sure how I felt about that. But I was like, it's early in the morning, and it's so hot out. This is probably a better opportunity to wear these than at 5 p.m. because it'd be way hotter. So I was like, I'll take it. And we got up and put on those cosplays and went to that, and there was like maybe a third of the people at that photo shoot that there was the previous year. And I was like, none of these people are going to know who Basara is anyway, so I just had a friend of ours take a few private photos of us, and we were already burning up. We were so hot, and like Michelle's wearing like she's like got a wig, an eye patch, her glasses, and a helmet. and is just dying and getting a headache. And so we probably wore those cosplays for like 45 minutes before getting them taken off again. And I had already sweat completely through my like Hakama shirt and everything. It was insane. So getting to enjoy being in cosplay at this con was very, very hard, especially for me, because one of my cosplays I didn't get to wear, and the other two were just really, 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 really hot. So we change out, we come back over to the Hilton. There's some more cosplay groups going on. There was a Transformers photo shoot, which is really cool. There's somebody who made a really, really, really impressive Starscream build, and there was somebody cosplaying as like the Bishojo statue version of Megatron, which was cool. Nice little group. And then on the other side of that was a sort of like Jurassic Park, Jurassic World group photo shoot, but they had a gimmick that was cool. So they were trying to get as many people as they could to dress up as Jimmy Buffett's cameo in the first Jurassic World, where he's like running away with the margaritas in his hand. Sorry, I bumped the mic there. And a lot of people did that. It was very funny. There was somebody cosplaying as like sexy, sweaty Jeff Goldblum, like laying down on the truck bed like that, which was absolutely hilarious. Two very fun groups that we got to look at there. Killed some time, looked at some other groups. There was like there's the Fallout group. There was a might have been like a Game of Thrones group or something like that. It was on the other side. Talked to some people I knew, and then we headed back over to the Westin for another video game panel. This was a Pokemon panel, and it was about thinking about raising Pokemon from like an animal welfare, like zoology perspective. And again, a qualified professional on this panel, like an actual animal welfare specialist type person, talking about how to raise Pokemon. And it was really cool because I thought it was going to be the same gimmick over and over again throughout the panel of like, oh, you wouldn't want to own that. That thing's 12 feet tall and breathes fire. Oh, you don't want to have that as a pet. That thing can electrocute you. Oh, you don't want to have that thing as a pet. That thing is God. Like, you don't want to have that thing as a pet because that thing can warp reality. Like dumb stuff like that. But it was more so like, here are the core fundamentals of animal welfare, and like understanding the different needs of different real world animals in real life. And so with that in mind, what do you, the audience, think that this abstract fictional creature would need in real life to be taken care of? So it was a very interactive, very informative, great panel for kids. Kids had a blast at that panel. It was, kid friendly, and they had a lot of really cool animations. Like the guy's PowerPoint would send out little Pokeballs would pop open and stuff like that. It was a really, really well done panel overall. And then we had a little bit more time to kill. Went back to the room to let our friend change out of her cosplay. And we got dinner. I went back to Peachtree Center, and the only place left that I wanted to go to for the rest of the weekend in Peachtree Center was the Cuban sandwich place. It was so good. It was so good. I think that place will be a staple every single year. It's almost so good where I would like to go outside of the con. Like, I wouldn't go all the way to Atlanta just to go there, but I would, if I was in Atlanta for something else, I would stop in the Peachtree Center to go there. It was quite good. And then we had a little bit more time to kill. And, well, actually, no, this was actually a pretty tight time window. We pretty much got done with we got our food, brought it up to the room, let her change out, went back down to the con, and we immediately went to another science panel in the same room that the Science is Gross panel was. And this one was about dirt. Or specifically, it was about the biology and like all the microbes and stuff like that are in soil, and the effect that has on other aspects of scientific study. So really cool panel. This panel was very like professional, like everybody
everybody speak very professionally into their microphone, and if everybody in the audience will just silence their phones really quick during this presentation, we would really appreciate it. We're going to have some very thoughtful discussion here, and we don't want anybody to interrupt us, so please, everybody, have a good time. It was like that type of panel, but it was still like funny. There was still a good sense of humor to it, and the most interesting part about it that I liked was there's a guy who is basically, his job is to keep track of and clean up different sites around the Atlanta area that used to be like factories and stuff like that, where they had like toxic runoff, and or they like just demolished their factory and built stuff over it, and there's stuff like polluting the soil under that and everything. And so he's got like a map of like different sites around the city that are like full, like the soil is full of like toxic stuff, and they're trying to clean that stuff up. And I thought that, as an Atlanta local, very fascinating, and I would love to know like what sites there are out there like that. But immediately after that panel ended, we went back to the Marriott and did like, Sunday night is peak people watching hours, because not only do people bring out some of their most impressive cosplays and walk around the atrium of the Marriott, but you get something that I have coined the term of Sunday night shit posts, which is you'll see something and you're like, man, how did they convince so many people to agree to this abstract idea? Everybody's familiar with the inflatable dinosaurs, so they'll have like a parade of the inflatable dinosaurs all going throughout the con, and there's like the generic one, but there's also like a Spider-Man and Venom one, or like a Marriott carpet one, or like other, like a Godzilla one or Reptar kind of thing, and there'll be millions of different varieties of the inflatable dinosaurs, and they'll just march their way through the con. There's also a bunch of Lord of the Rings cosplayers that will do like the elves leaving Middle Earth, like they'll do the march with like the bells and the singing and everything. And it has like this, they march in this big long line, they go all throughout the con, and you can hear the bell coming like when they're on their way. And so I'm standing there with our friends who have never seen this before, and I'm like, oh, you can hear them, they're coming in. And they're like, what is it? I'm like, it's the elves, they're leaving. And sure enough, you see them go by, and you hear like the choir of their singing or whatever, and it's like, it has this like almost haunting sound that like is the perfect pitch to like cut through all of the con noise to where you hear it. Just a really, really cool group. There's a friend of mine that's often at the head of that group, because they have a really impressive singing voice and a really impressive elf cosplay, so it works out. But one of the other ones is, if you're familiar with the SNL skit when The Force Awakens came out, there's the undercover boss thing about Kylo Ren, where it's like all the staff of Starkiller Base, where he's like, what do you think about Kylo Ren, huh? I hear he's got an 8-pack. And like that whole skit, there's like an entire group of like 40 guys that will all dress up as that version of Kylo Ren and just parade around the Marriott. It's very stupid. It's very, very fun. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else this year. There's usually, people will do like alternate versions of their cosplays wearing like Hooters uniforms and stuff like that. Some friends of mine have done that before. Just like Sunday night is absolute peak people watching for sure. But we were standing in the atrium of the Marriott watching all these groups go by, because we were waiting in line for Son of, which is the panel that has become a staple of Dragoncon for me. And it's very hard to describe what Son of is. You just kind of have to see it. It is 3 hours of the weirdest videos you've ever seen in your life, and some genuinely impressive original animations and like music videos and stuff like that. So it's like just videos from the absolute depths of the internet that you never thought you would see, and you're like, I don't know what this is, and I don't know if I will ever unsee this, but I am very entertained and very intrigued. And So they'll do like 45 minutes of videos, 15 minutes of trivia, 45 minutes of videos, 50 minutes of trivia, etc. And the trivia, he'll ask you like tough questions about these videos. Um, he'll be like, "What was the thing?" And you're like, "I don't know what video that refers to. I don't know what that is." It could be any, and sometimes they'll ask you a question about a video from a different hour block of the panel, so you're really not prepared. But they used to give away like whole anime DVDs, like anime DVD sets and everything, and then it started giving away like board games and other things that may come from a website adjacent to Bad Dragon. And so because this year the panel started at 8:30 instead of 10, he was giving away the board games, and then he couldn't give away his first phallic object until after 10 p.m. when the panel, like, I guess, like transitioned to being 18 plus. I don't know how that works. It's funny because like this year I was familiar with like 85% of the videos he showed. There was only a very, 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 very small handful of videos that I had not already seen. I was familiar with almost all of them. And I still had a great time, even though I was familiar with a lot of the videos. And I think a lot of this, I've just looked up so many of the videos on my own now. But my friends that were with me, I had like, I had Michelle and her friend that I was rooming with all with me, but I also had the friend from that I've known for like 17, 18 years who I met up with, also there with me with her husband, and they had no idea any of this stuff. So like one of the videos starts playing, and I'm like quoting it word for word, and she's like, "What is this?" Like looking over at me, and I'm quoting it, and she's just like completely dumbfounded by the sheer insanity of what's on screen. I highly, highly recommend anybody who goes to Dragoncon that does not know about Son of, go to Son of. It's worth it. It's always been it's been a highlight of my Dragoncon for the last like 6 or 7 Dragoncons, I feel like. But we got out of there about 11:30, and I decided I was going to bite the bullet, stay awake, and drive my car all the way from the con home to take my big sword for Orin and our crate full of armor back to the house, and then drive back to the con and sleep. And that way we would not be pressured to get out on Monday morning, because Monday is still like a full day of the con. And the only thing we really wanted to do on Monday was just kind of, relax, take in the sights, and go to the dealer's room one final time, which we did. So that was nice to be able to get all that stuff home, come back, and still enjoy the con on Monday. We had a really good time doing that. It all worked out perfectly. And like I said, Monday was just like the slow crawl through the con of like, oh, we're so tired, but we're still high on life. Like we're running on absolute empty. We're just running on the enthusiasm of still being here and all the hype and all the fun from throughout the weekend. And we don't even party like really hard. There are some people that go so over the top and crazy with how hard they party. It couldn't be me. Could not be me. But we went through the dealer's room one final time, got to finish the second floor and the first floor. I just bought some cardboard. I bought some boxes of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that were like half off, so that was fun. And we found, again, it was really cool because there's like online stores that my wife and our friend follow that they got to like see in person at Dragoncon that they had never thought would actually even be there. So it's like, hey, I know this website. I've been thinking about ordering from them. They're right in front of me. How cool is that? And so like that was a really cool it was very, very fun to see their reactions to this type of stuff that was there that they didn't expect was going to be there. I got a huge kick out of seeing their reactions to stuff. But that's about it. DragonCon was great. Very different from my other DragonCons. Didn't really get to do a lot of the cosplay stuff that I wanted to do, but I will take that as a trade-off for the fun that I did have. And I got to do a lot more panels this year that were all really, really solid. And I think DragonCon panels are always really cool, but it's always so hard to make time for them in my previous years. And there's been plenty of DragonCons where I have done 0 panels. And so I'm glad that this year was not the case. I'm glad everything worked out. It was super convenient, pretty laid back compared to some DragonCons. Didn't burn ourselves out too terribly bad. And I'm glad that the people that went with me had a really good time. So, yeah, about that about covers my little recap of DragonCon this year. So hope you, if you guys went, you guys also had a good time. And if you have any questions about stuff we did or whatever, just let me know.